Hi everyone and welcome back to WARNO Davout is upon us. We finally have our German divisions. Now they released a little bit of sort of a dev blog with this. I'm not going to go into any detail on that other than the patch notes because we're about to go through all the units anyway. Regarding the changes, there's various little fixes to things, nothing too exciting. Fixed labels, fixed units not stopping when in hunt mode to fire at targets, fixed helicopters not taking into account their altitude to determine the line of sight, fixed short on-foot pathfinding to now go for the straightest path that you select, so they will go through forest rather than try to avoid them, fixed pinning units in the armory as intended, fixed most cases of helicopters flying through the forests, though on short distances it will still apply, fixed a rare bug that would make it impossible to select units, fixed disappearing decks at first launch, really good if you've ever had that problem, it's quite a nightmare. Fixed the Mi-24V rocket loadout from 10 to 20 as fitting with the model, and the price has been increased from 130 to 160. The Su-25 rockets 80mm loadout from the wrong 64 to the correct 88 rockets, plus a price increase from 95 to 115 accordingly, and they've fixed the MG3 gunner's manner of holding the gun, which I hadn't even noticed, because I don't zoom in that often, admittedly. Now here are some of the big changes. Normalization pass on unit optics. Now, we'd spotted this in the game before I read these patch notes because we updated first and had a quick look. And it appears that now all infantry just have very good optics. None of them have exceptional as they did before. So this is a big change. So it actually nullifies some of the stuff I've said before, in that I was using infantry at times in some of my videos which had exceptional. Obviously that's now changed. Normalization pass on supply vehicles load in order to even it across all the unit cards, plus some price changes. This is a big change and affects all the decks, even the old ones. Overall adjustment on helicopter prices, and they have decreased all F111, Su-24 and Tornado tactical bombers, HE cluster and napalm max card per deck to just 1. Obviously trying to reduce that bomber spam. But let's have a look in the game at the actual units. We'll just have a quick look through the units here. We're not going to build a deck per se. First thing I want to mention are the supply units. So supplies changed a lot. It applies to every deck. The M113, for example, no longer has 800 supply. It only has 500 across the board. Also, the prices have been adjusted, and now a truck with the same amount of supply will cost less than the armoured M113 or any equivalents. The huge trucks have 1,750, but basically it's just a general rejig across the board, and I'd make sure you spend some time calculating what is the most effective to take in now in terms of price. I'd certainly now obviously be questioning whether it's worth taking in the M113. Yes, it has a little bit of armour, but is it worth it? I don't know. It's 5 points more. I'd probably just be taking in the trucks now. Other thing that we can see straight away on the deck screen that has changed since the last patch is you can now change all the details here, in the sense of you can change whether you want elite or veteran. So you can just switch between those. And also you'll notice that it tells you how many will be available when you've chosen that. So elite we get 2 and veteran we get 4. We still have our amount of cards that are available for each unit at the bottom as well. Not a huge choice here in terms of command vehicle for the 5th Panzer, but let's jump to infantry. This is where things get interesting because it's where we get the Marder, which is really good. I mean, really, really good. Very, very pleased with the Marder. Tested it out yesterday in a few games. Really effective against infantry. Pretty good against choppers. And the missiles are pretty good against tanks, so, you know, it's got a bit of everything. So you've got a few different units here. One of the other things we can see immediately is when we're selecting units here, we can now select their vehicle immediately. One of the things I'll note about the 5th Panzer Division, and this is going to get patched fairly quickly I think, is that right now the TPZ Fox is 10 and the little truck is 15. Obviously that's the wrong way around if anything, but likely this TPZ Fox should actually be something like 20 points, because there's no way it should be cheaper, because firstly it's got armor and secondly it's got a gun, so it shouldn't be as cheap as it is. But we've got a nice selection of units here. You got the Field Jaeger, which are just guys with little MP5s. You've got the Sicherungs, which have the G3A4. They only come in as poor though, but they are good fillers. Spam infantry, you get 12 of them. Then you've got the command options. You've got the Pioneer Fur, the Panzer Grenadier Fur, and the Jaeger Fur. Now, if you're going to take any of these, I've got to be honest, for me, both in terms of strength, which is 6, compared to the Jaeger, which have 4, and the Pioneers, which have 5, the Panzer Grenadiers also get a red eye. Now, the red eye is shockingly bad. However, it's still anti-air. And giving your commander some anti-air isn't a bad idea. They can defend themselves a little bit if they do get found by a chopper at least. Let's have a look at the other infantry options. So you get the Pioneers with the satchel charge. I still need to have a proper test of satchel charges. Get the Pioneer Flam, which have this hand flam patron. This is a little flame shotgun. I did use them a little bit yesterday, but it was hard to say how effective they truly were. Need to see a little bit more with those. Obviously, probably not as good as a flamethrower. You got the Pioneer Armbrust, which is looking to be some kind of recoilless rifle, I think, more than anything else. Then you got the Panzer Grenadiers with the Carl Gustav, very good anti-tank weapon, pretty decent range as well, you'll notice. Then you've got the Panzer Grenadiers in an M113. They come in the A1G, which just has an MG3 on top of it. Nothing too exciting there. Where it gets exciting is the Panzer Grenadier Marder. Look at how many Marders you get. Look at how cheap they seem to be at the moment. I feel like they may get a little bit of a rework in pricing here. I mean, you can get the Marder 1A3 Milan, which has the same armor as the BMP3 with its lovely cannon, a nice Milan 2 and an MG, and it's only 40 points. Don't get me wrong, you know, it's more than certain that the BMP3 is better, but that cost 55 points. This is only 40. Should this cost 45? I feel like these could probably go up by 5 points each, just because at the moment, I mean, these things are devastating. I was basically bringing in a deck with mostly Panzer Grenadier Marders, because the Panzer Grenadiers themselves... I need to select a different infantry to show you it again, because you can't switch between them, I don't think. But look at that. Panzerfaust, MG3, and the G3A4s. They're only 5 strength, but that strength is easily made up for with the Marders. The Marders rip infantry to shreds. Even the Marder 1A2s. They'll do damage to vehicles up close, especially tanks up close. You can probably damage little boxes from much further away with them. And the other nice thing about the Marders is obviously you do get the Milan 2, or indeed the Milan 2 on the A1, or the A2 as well, sorry. So, you know, very, very effective at range against tanks as well. Plenty of potential for spamming those. There is obviously good reason to bring in the other Panzer Grenadiers, because they have a bigger strength. You know, there's only 6 of those guys, but the Panzerfaust 44 guys, there are 9 of them. Strength does make a difference. But for me, the Panzer Grenadiers of the Marder makes up for that. Then of course you got the Jaegers, which only come in as trained. They're 11 in strength. They get the Panzerfaust, they get an MG3, and they get loads of G3A4s. Nice squad for soaking up, attacking enemy infantry, good in towns, good in forests. Certainly something I would probably have in my deck. They're a little bit more expensive because of the number of them you get, the strength 11 there. Moving on, artillery wise, you get a nice selection here. Of course, you get your mortar, which is great, though I think they need to change the model for that, because it is currently just a standard vehicle, not one with a mortar attached to it. You also then get the M109 and the M110. Again, choice is yours here. Personally, I grabbed the Lars 2, which is cluster munitions. Really nice vehicle, very effective. At trained, you get 4 of those. Why wouldn't you? I see absolutely no reason to be increasing that to veteran and lose 2. You can easily have 4 of those with just 1 card. Then you've got the Mars. Again, pretty big HE damage on this. And again, you get 3 of them at trained. I'd be sticking that in my deck as well. Whether you bring some mortars or some of the other artillery is completely up to you. I think it needs some more testing to see if they've made any further changes to it at the moment, but we'll do that in another video. Tanks. Nice selection here. You've got the Leopard 2A3. Just bring loads of those. They're very good. Bring them in as veteran would be my choice. You still get 4 of them. They've got good penetration. They've got decent front armor. Obviously, same for the command tank. The Jaguar 2s and the Jaguar 1s, you know, you get a TOW 2 missile on the Jaguar 2. That's really good accuracy even on trained. But it is so expensive right now, 170 points. There are situations where it's definitely worth it. But really, versus the Russians, some of their tanks are going to outrange you. In terms of the tank's missile option, I should stress. But yeah, so that they're too expensive right now for me. You got the Leopard 1A5, nothing special, bit of a filler. Get the Leopard 1A1, which is a ridiculous name for a tank, but again, pretty decent. I mean, between the two, you lose a bit of accuracy and stuff, but if you're just wanting something cheap to bring in, I'd probably bring that in. Got the M48. Has a decent array of weapon systems. What's it going to be useful for? Probably bringing in and sitting in a tree line where you're going to be near the enemy. It's going to get badly torn up by another tank. It's only got 5 front armor. I mean, it's nothing special really, is it? But it is what it is. I wouldn't be putting it in my deck personally. Then you've got your Recon. Options here, you've got the Lux, which only has good optics. You've got the Aufklärer, you've got the Aufkohl, and you've got the Fernspur. Now, here, optics, very good across the board. No more exceptional optics, very disappointed. You've got the Alouette 2 as well, which has very good optics. Basically, the 5th Panzer Division has no exceptional optics at all. So I'd be relying heavily on the infantry here, mainly for the fact that at least they can get a bit closer before they're seen, because they do still have that exceptional stealth. So that would be my choice. In terms of weapon systems, I mean, you know, there's not a huge difference here. These guys have pretty much similar, except one has 11 and one has 4 members to the squad. And then the Fernspur, they have the grenade satchel charge. I'm still, as I say, unsure how much damage they do. I need to test those. It is on my list of testing for this patch. Anti-air options wise, you've got the Fliegerfaust, which has the red eye. I wouldn't even bother adding that to your deck. The red eye is useless. You've got the Jeopard 1A1, which is reasonable. Its range isn't great, but you know, it's going to be good against everything. Please note it's radar, so you will have to be turning that on and off. The Roland 2. This has a bit better range against aircraft. It's fire and forget, and it is not radar. So this one you don't have to worry about turning on and off. Certainly one I'd be bringing in. We'll ignore the fact it's got a radar dish on it, shall we? But it is not labelled as radar. Then you got the Roland 3, which is labelled as radar. It has an even better range against aircraft in particular. This one, again, you're going to have to be turning the weapon systems on and off if you don't want to get hit by those seaplanes, which the Russians now have. Helicopters-wise, you got a Hot 1 and you got a Hot 2. That's pretty much it. There would be some argument for just not bringing any helicopters in this deck, and it's not a bad argument. I'd consider potentially taking one just to test the missiles out, and there are situations where it would be handy to have that option, because it does have a decent range. It's in the air, but really, if anyone's got any anti-air close to the front lines, it's going to die before it kills a tank. Swinging around behind the enemy to kill artillery, yes, definitely has potential. But yeah, I'm in two minds. You wouldn't necessarily need to bring that in this deck. So you got your rocket jet. You've got this one for anti-air, which is absolutely atrocious. I wouldn't really be bothering to bring that in. You got the F4F AA, which again, it's not got anything special in terms of long-range missiles. And this is the problem with this deck. Its anti-air options in the air are really poor. If you have to bring something, I'd probably bring the F4F. You got the F4F anti-tank, which has Mavericks, which I quite like. Some people don't like them. You've got the IDS HE. You got 3 HE bombs on there. You got the Tornado IDS MW1. This is the bad boy. This is the cluster bomblets that absolutely carpets an area of ground. This is a beastly weapon if you can get it into the enemy airspace or into an enemy force where they're attacking you. Unfortunately, its agility is normal, its air optics are exceptional, but it's not going to do well in air-to-air combat. This is a call in, do the damage, and get out as quickly as possible. You can have 2 of them if you call them in as trained. You do get a standard Tornado IDS cluster, which has 5 rock eyes. Obviously, nothing to be unhappy about. It's still going to drop quite a lot of payload. Then you get the F-16C seed. It's nice to have a seed available, especially now that the Russians have them as well. I'd certainly be potentially bringing that along with me. And then you've got the F4F HE, which is your carpet bomber. 12 Mark 82 bombs. Certainly, again, something I'd be bringing in personally. So for me here, I'd be bringing in the Tornado IDS MW1 for its cluster. I'd be bringing in the F4F HE. I'd be bringing in the seed. And I'd certainly probably bring in the F4F AA just so I had something in. If I was in a team game and I knew I was going to have an ally with better ASF, that's air superiority fighters for those who don't know, then I would be asking them to bring stuff and not bringing that in my deck. So that's the Panzer Division. Let's exit out and just discard that, and let's have a look at the 7th Panzer Division on the packed side. So, a little bit different here. We don't have as many options in terms of the supply vehicles. So you have an armoured one, but not a little truck that also has 5 or 800. That's 20 points. I'd honestly be giving that a wide berth. Instead, I'd just bring plenty of the T813s. Yes, they're 55 points, but they have a bigger amount of supply. If you think about it this way, 3 of those is 60 points and you're getting 1,500. 1 of those is 55 and you're getting 1,750. So basically you're getting 70 points worth if you were buying the little armoured vehicle. So you're better off going with that for 55. I'd just be adding both of those to my deck. And then a command vehicle of your choice. You have BTR 50PU, you have the BMP 1K SP2, and you have the SPW 40P2. I mean, I'd be taking one of the 100 point ones. You only get 3 of either of them. I don't think there's any benefit to having an elite one here. So it's just completely up to you. Difference being speed here. 90 versus 41. I'd probably get the SPW for its speed. I don't think there's any benefit to having 2 additional front armour unless you're planning to park it at the front lines, and even then it's going to get destroyed too quickly. Infantry is where we start to see some interesting stuff for the 7th Panzer Division. Obviously we have the Panzerjäger, which have 2, that's right, 2 RPG-7s. So they fire 2 RPGs at once. That's pretty good. I mean, in a town, in a forest, these things are going to tear up any vehicles that get near them. Very, very good unit in my opinion. I'd definitely be having that in my deck. Commanders wise, you got the Pioneer Fur or you've got the Motorschützen Fur. They both have 4-member squads. One's got an RPG-7, one's got an RPG-18. I mean, there's 5 points difference. I'd probably go with the RPG-7 personally. Unless you're particularly wanting a different selection of your vehicles to bring them in. Personally, I'd just go with those guys, because I'd rather have the RPG-7. Then you got the Pioneers, which have the satchel charges again. Pretty standard infantry, 8 of them. Then you've got the Pioneer Flamers. This is a proper flamethrower finally, so really nice to see one of those in the game. You only get 1 card of them, and you can only bring them in as veteran or elite. Just bring them in as veterans to get as many as possible. I mean, it's a flamethrower. Got Moto Suchin there, strength 8, decent unit. Got the RPG-7, and 2 RPKs, might I add. Something to always pay attention to in the game right now. How many machine guns these guys have. And the same applies to the standard Moto Suchin. So completely up to you what you bring here. I'd be bringing a selection. Obviously, these cards here, these 3, I'd certainly be adding in, but you only get 1 card of each of them. Artillery-wise, not quite as much of a selection here. You obviously have the standard artillery pieces that we've seen so far. Pretty decent artillery. I'd probably be bringing those in, again, just at the lowest veterancy level you can. The MFRWRM-70, it's a grad launcher with more ammo, so it can reload itself. Tanks, you get a nice selection here. You've got, can I just point out here, this is going to get patched very quickly, but right now, you can have a command tank for 70 points. Obviously, this is a mistake and it's going to get changed, but right now you can have a T-55 command tank for 70 points. Bearing in mind that the same command tank up here, or a similar one, is 145. So it's basically, you know, a significant difference there. But, yeah, that's going to be going up in price, probably to 170. But you've got the T-55As up here at the top, nice and cheap. Not much armor, decent penetration for at least if they're getting up close and personal. Please note their range is only 1945. Then you get the really nice addition to the game, which is the flame tank. Yes, please make sure you put these in your deck. This is what you need for clearing forests and towns. Then you've got the T-55 AM2. Obviously an increase in front armor, not a huge change to the weapon other than an increase in range and accuracy over the T-55A. You also get the T-55 AM2B, which has a very nice missile with a really good range. Out of these 2 tanks, I'd be bringing this in for 80 points because I want its missile. You get the Conkers, which is actually one of the cheaper anti-tank vehicles in the game right now, so that might actually be worth it, considering a lot of the others cost well over 100 points. That's probably more on par with the pricing I would like to see for them. Then you get the standard T-72, which is, you know, it's got 11 front armor, nothing special, decent penetration. You got the command tank, 12 front armor. You got the T-72 GM, 12 front armor, same gun basically. And you've also got the T-72 GM1. Difference there being mainly that the front armor is increased. I'd be bringing as many of the bigger end tanks as you can, because really your tank options are limited to quite cheap tanks, so you can spam them, but obviously going up against a Leopard 2A3, they're going to get minced. So you're going to be seeing a lot of spam and rush tactics with the T-55s. I was seeing that last night already. Recon wise, you've got the BRDM2, which has good optics. You do have the BRM1 down at the bottom here, which has exceptional optics. I'd certainly be putting that in my deck, turning off its weapons and just sitting it near the front lines to spot enemy units. Again, the infantry, we are now seeing all very good optics and exceptional stealth. No longer any exceptional optics on these infantry. Choices wise, you know, again, this is going to be one of those, what vehicle do you want to bring them in with more than anything else, and how many members are in a squad so they survive a bit longer. And the price pretty much reflects that. So take your pick. It's all about optics and stealth really for me, and they're all the same. Anti-air options, where you have your Strela up there, I'd certainly be taking that just because it's better than nothing. That said, honestly, it's not really any better than the Red Eye, so I could also say don't bother yourself with it. Shilka, yes, well worth getting, just as a little bit of extra defense. You could potentially take elites of those. Cub, fantastic range, very poor accuracy. Bringing in Veteran only allows you to bring in one, which is quite disappointing, and its accuracy only goes up to 50%. Basically, I'd be spamming Strelas, but you can only bring one card. This, at least at Veteran, you get 6 of them, and they have 62% accuracy. It's a difficult one with the AA in this deck. Helicopters-wise, a bit more of a selection than the 5th Panzer Division get. You've got 2 rocket choppers, take your pick. You've got the Mi-24D anti-tank, which has a mediocre anti-tank missile, and you got the Mi-24P anti-tank, which has a better anti-tank missile with a better range. If you're going to bring one of those, considering they are the same price, can we just look at that here? You're seeing that, right? The Mi-24P has an autocannon, and it has the Concon missile. Or the Cocon even. Take that. It's the same price, and it's better. If you're going to take something, take that. You can also take these up here for a bit of rocket spam. Then in the air tab, interesting selection again. You've got this with 4 bombs, nothing special. You've got this guy with rockets for a bit of harassment. It has 122mm and 57mm rockets. You get the anti-air here, which isn't anything spectacular. Nothing long range really, same as the 5th Panzer. You get the slightly bigger bombs on the MiG-23 MF. And you also have an anti-tank option here, which has a penetration of 30, 50% accuracy. But for me, this is probably well worth it. You can put the accuracy up to 62% with that. But honestly, 50%, you get 2 of them. Decent missiles. I'd just bring those as is, to be honest. You get the 22 M4HE, which has 4 500kg bombs again. You get the cluster, which has 4 500kg bombs. You get the napalm, which has 4 500kg bombs. Are you seeing the pattern here? Then you have the option of the Su-22M4K. This again has anti-tank. Now the main thing to note here is the target range for ground targets. This is 200 less compared to this one here. So for me, while it is slightly more expensive, I'd actually probably take the Su-22M4K because it has a longer range. Also, you get 4 of them if you take them in at trained with that same 50% accuracy, but you can boost that to veteran, still bring in 2 of them, and increase your accuracy to 62%. I mean, that's completely up to you what you bring there, but good variety of options. You also have the Su-22M4P, which is your anti-radar plane. Definitely get that stuck in there. Interestingly, accuracy here is only 50%. Now, generally, accuracy on the anti-radar weapons is pretty much 100% in Wargame. So it'll be interesting to see if this is actually going to miss in WARNO. But you can get it all the way up to 75% if you bring it in as elite. But needs a bit of testing, but I'm assuming that it will still hit when it's trained, and this accuracy is a bit of a misnomer. So that's all of the units. I'm going to pause the video very quickly and hop into the new map. So welcome back to the new map, Geezer. So this is a huge map. This is mainly planned for 10v10, though it's not currently added to the 10v10 servers, I understand. That is upcoming and is currently 4 vs 4, I believe. But look at the size of this map. Obviously, just one huge deployment zone with multiple ways in at both sides. Really nice and detailed map. Very weird set of points at this far side that are kind of very out the way. I mean, I think it's difficult because you can't really, unless you added some roads here, you can't really extend the sort of spawn point into that area. You could at this side because you've got roads here. But yeah, I think it would be very unfair to extend it because these guys have to go all the way around to get into here. But as it stands, they just look a bit out the way. But it gives someone, you know, something else to fight over. There's a lot of forest here. There's going to be a lot of forest fighting. You're going to want a lot of infantry with missile launchers and things. Expect a lot of bombers as well to be ripping apart infantry over here. The centre, you've got much more of an interesting selection. You've got this lovely radio tower here, which we've seen on other maps as well. You've got a mixture of points on this map. You've got some which obviously based in towns. You've got some others which are more focused on forest fighting. I feel like this map is going to be a really good one for some nasty stalemates and major forest fighting. It's going to be a big fight over points like this. Oscar, Charlie potentially, Golf certainly, Hotel, Delta. You know, this is where the back and forth is going to be between these points here. Foxtrot, probably. I think it's going to be more a case of, you know, Papa is going to be held by this side, November by that side, Kilo, India, Juliet certainly by this side. The same for Alpha, Bravo and Mike up there. This is where all the combat's going to be taking place. And potentially even more so a real focus here. Because these are like the single points in the middle. Whereas here you've sort of got one for each side and maybe people will be satisfied. I feel like this point in particular has a big advantage for whoever's at this side of the map. Because if you turn it around, you've got a bit of open field here to get through. And not much place to hide a CV if you get in this side. I mean, you're literally in this corner. And a cluster artillery is going to kill any CV, a normal artillery, any infantry CV in that corner. So as long as you can secure all of this side, it's going to be difficult to get in here and stay in. This one, you know, because it's so much forest at both sides, easy to push in. I'd just be bringing in loads of infantry there. Golf the same, loads of infantry. You're a bit unfortunate if you're stuck at this side, because you got less to hide in. And down here, whoever gets this side, big advantage. Not a lot of places to hide over here. Obviously getting into those buildings would be beneficial. Not much in this point here. It's mostly these trees in the middle. Is that building technically in it? Half in, half out. Maybe that needs a little bit of a redraw. Over here, you know, the positioning of that point feels a bit off. I wonder if they've deliberately missed off these trees here. So that you can't just sort of come this way through the forest into these buildings and across into here to cap this point. It does look a bit odd, that point. Over here, forest fighting. Forest fighting. Forest fighting. This is all going to depend on how much one team pushes this side. Potential that one team pushes with 2 people, the other team only with 1, and that the team with 2 people just pile drive through here. And obviously, with all of this forest here, and another tower, might I add, it's going to be very easy to get around the back, round here, potentially all the way to this spawn by going through all of these trees. And you'll notice that you can't do that on the other side. The trees don't get that close. Can we just take a moment to appreciate how nice the water is on this map, by the way? Look at the shine on that. Isn't that nice? I mean, you can even see the riverbed through there. The bits that are slightly higher Well, that's everything for this video. It was just a quick run through of the units. I will be doing deck videos. Obviously, I just want to test some of the units a little bit more first. And obviously expect an incoming patch to adjust some of the pricing in particular, as it's a little bit wonky right now. Thanks for watching everyone. Please like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you all soon for some more WARNO.